Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, small, or strangely guilty, even though you did nothing wrong? That's not just a bad moment. That's emotional damage, and most people don't even realize it's happening. Toxic people are not always obvious. They don't always shout or insult you to your face. Sometimes they wrap their manipulation in charm. Sometimes they disguise control as concern. You might hear a soft laugh that leaves a sharp sting, a harmless joke that cuts a little too deep, a sudden shift in tone that makes you question if you're overreacting. Over time, this silent poison changes how you see yourself, and that's exactly how they win. Toxic energy is subtle. It doesn't crash into your life like a storm. It slips in quietly, whispering doubts when you're already tired, making you feel like maybe you're the problem, or maybe you're too sensitive, maybe they didn't mean it, so you stay quiet, you try harder, you shrink just a little, hoping things will go smoother next time, and that's how the cycle begins. The longer you tolerate it, the more it becomes your normal. But let me ask you something. What has that silence cost you? How many times have you walked away from a moment replaying it in your head, trying to find the right words you never said? How many times have you betrayed your own peace just to avoid confrontation? This pain isn't weakness. It's not failure. It's the result of having a good heart in a world that sometimes uses that kindness as a doorway. But here's what no one tells you. You don't have to keep carrying this weight. You don't have to keep letting toxic people take pieces of you just because it's easier than setting boundaries. You have a choice. One decision, one real shift in how you respond can change the entire game, not just for a moment, but forever. Because once you understand how to shut that door, once you learn how to protect your energy, something incredible happens. They stop. They walk away, not because you forced them out, but because they can no longer access what they came for. Your attention, your emotional reaction, your self-doubt, it's gone. And in that quiet power, you reclaim yourself. If you've ever felt like no matter how kind, patient, or giving you are, it's never enough, this is your moment to break that pattern. To finally say no more without shouting a single word. Stay with me because you're going to learn the one thing, just one simple action, that toxic people cannot stand. Do this once and they'll stop bothering you. Not temporarily. Permanently, because when your energy changes, so does your reality. And you deserve a life free from manipulation, free from doubt, free from emotional exhaustion. You deserve peace that doesn't ask you to shrink for it. So keep watching, because everything begins now. You've been taught to be nice, to give second chances, to be understanding even when it hurts. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that setting boundaries made you selfish, that protecting your peace meant you were pushing people away. But the truth is, you weren't pushing people away. You were just afraid of losing the wrong ones. Toxic people feed off that fear. They know your heart is wired to care. They count on your silence. They count on your hesitation. And they survive because you keep questioning yourself more than you question their behavior. Every time you ignore that gut feeling, you give away a little piece of your power. And over time, your confidence fades. You begin to believe that maybe it really is your fault. Maybe you are overreacting. Maybe if you just tried harder, they'd change. But deep down, you know better. You know how many times you've bent until you broke. How many times you stayed silent just to keep the peace while destroying your own. That's not kindness, that's emotional survival. And it's not sustainable. Toxic people don't want your love. They want your control. They want to twist your kindness into obligation, to turn your loyalty into a leash. They wear masks of charm and concern, but underneath is a need to dominate the emotional space. And once they find a way in, they don't leave unless you show them the door, not with rage, not with drama, but with a kind of strength they cannot manipulate, clarity, emotional clarity. The moment you become clear on who you are and what you will no longer tolerate, you become impossible to control. Because clarity doesn't beg. Clarity doesn't explain. It simply is. This is the shift. When you stop trying to prove your worth and start protecting your energy. When you stop waiting for someone to respect your feelings and start respecting them yourself. You are not difficult. You are not too sensitive. You are awake. And being awake in a world full of manipulation is a superpower. You don't owe anyone access to your inner peace. You don't need to explain why your mental health matters. You don't need to feel guilty for putting up walls that protect your growth. Let them think you've changed. Let them say you're acting different. You are. You're healing. You're choosing yourself. And that's the most powerful thing you can do. Because once you do this, once you draw the line that cannot be crossed, they'll feel it, not in your words, but in your energy. And energy doesn't lie. They'll either back off or walk away. But they won't bother you again. Not because you've fought them, but because they'll finally see what you've always been capable of. Unshakable self-respect. And that is the beginning of freedom, not just from them, but from the pattern that kept inviting them in. Keep going. You're stepping into a version of yourself that they'll never be able to reach again. Silence feels easier sometimes, doesn't it? You tell yourself it's not worth the fight, that you're just keeping the peace, that letting it go is the mature thing to do. But deep inside, you know what's really happening. You're swallowing your truth to make others comfortable. You're betraying your instincts to avoid confrontation. And every time you do that, a part of you fades. Your voice gets quieter. Your confidence gets smaller. You carry the weight of what you wanted to say but never did. And that silence doesn't protect you. It erodes you. Toxic people don't need to scream to do damage. They just need you to stay quiet, to keep second-guessing yourself, to keep tolerating their behavior because you're afraid of being seen as the problem. But staying silent is not strength. It's not peace. It's slow, quiet surrender. It's teaching the world that your needs are optional, that your feelings come second. And the more you do it, the more they believe it, until one day even you start to believe it too. But it doesn't have to stay that way. You can choose something different. You can choose to honor your discomfort, to listen to your instincts instead of burying them. You were never meant to carry this weight alone. You were never meant to turn yourself inside out just to keep someone else from feeling uncomfortable. Your voice matters. Your feelings are real. And the moment you stop silencing yourself to protect others is the moment you begin protecting yourself. There is power in speaking up, even if your voice shakes. There is strength in choosing your truth, even if no one claps for it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all, just a boundary calmly enforced without apology. Because when you no longer seek permission to exist, toxic people lose their hold. They can't thrive where clarity lives. They can't manipulate someone who doesn't need approval to act. This is what they don't expect. They're prepared for arguments, for emotional reactions, for guilt to keep you locked in. But they're not prepared for stillness, for unshakable energy, for the quiet confidence of someone who no longer plays the game. That's where your power lives, not in shouting louder, but in no longer shrinking. You owe yourself that version of peace, the kind that doesn't require permission, the kind that stands firm even when others push back, the kind that says, without needing to speak, I don't belong to your chaos anymore. You have the right to walk away from what wounds you. You have the right to reclaim your voice. And once you do, the ones who fed off your silence won't know where to go, because the version of you that allowed it no longer exists. What stands in their place is something stronger, someone untouchable. And that is the power of choosing yourself, even if it means losing everything that made you forget your worth. When you stop chasing their approval, everything changes. You stop bending to be accepted. You stop shrinking to be liked. You stop over-explaining just to be understood. And in that stillness, something powerful rises, self-respect. The kind that doesn't shout or argue, it simply exists. You no longer need to prove your worth because you know you're enough. And once you operate from that place, toxic people feel it. They sense the shift, the dynamic changes, because you're no longer reacting, you're deciding. You're no longer tangled in their drama, you're above it. They used to get to you, they knew which buttons to press, they counted on your need to fix things, your guilt, your empathy. But now you've pulled the plug. They can't drain you anymore. The emotional hooks don't land, because your validation no longer comes from their opinion, it comes from within. That is the moment you become free, not because they left, but because you finally did. Mentally, emotionally, energetically. Detachment is not cold. It's not cruel. It's clarity. It's choosing not to entertain what weakens your peace. You still feel, you still care, but you no longer compromise your dignity for the sake of keeping the connection. You recognize the difference between love and control, between respect and fear, between truth and manipulation. And that awareness becomes your armor, not hard, not closed off, but sacred. You are no longer available for people who drain you. You are no longer accessible to patterns that hurt you. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about proving anything. It's about healing. It's about becoming the version of you who doesn't settle for emotional scraps, who doesn't chase people who make love conditional, who doesn't second-guess their worth because someone else failed to see it. You don't need loud goodbyes. You don't need dramatic exits. Just silence. Just space. Just a quiet refusal to be treated like anything less than enough. And that's what toxic people can't stand. Not because you've attacked them, but because you've elevated. You're not playing by the old rules anymore. You're not hooked on the push and pull. You've stopped responding to chaos like it deserves your energy. And without your energy, they lose power. Without your attention, their games fall flat. You've outgrown the entire cycle. You are not difficult for having boundaries. You are not rude for saying no. You are not heartless for protecting your peace. You are wise. You are growing. You are finally choosing yourself. And when you do it with calm, with clarity, with conviction, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. Toxic people won't fight for your return, not because they've changed, but because they can no longer reach you. You've closed the door not with hate, but with healing. And in that space, you'll discover something beautiful. The life you were meant to live begins the moment you stop inviting pain to stay. Healing doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like no reply. Sometimes it's choosing silence, not because you're weak, but because you're done giving your peace to people who never earned it. That quiet decision to stop engaging, to stop explaining, to stop absorbing becomes your greatest act of strength. You realize that not everything deserves your reaction. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every guilt trip deserves a seat in your heart. When you finally decide to protect your energy like it matters, you begin to reclaim your life. You've spent enough time breaking yourself to make room for others. You've watered dead connections hoping they'd grow. You've overextended yourself just to hold things together. But there comes a moment when you stop trying to keep what's breaking you. You stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop asking for respect from those who only see you as someone to use. And in that moment, you don't just walk away from them. You walk back to yourself. That return is powerful because it's where clarity lives. It's where peace begins. It's where your voice, your value, your inner truth finally feels safe again. You no longer make excuses for people who harm you. You no longer normalize the emotional chaos you used to call love or friendship. You no longer stay just because you're afraid to leave. And as hard as it feels, that decision becomes the line between the life you had and the life you're about to create. Toxic people can only stay in places where doubt lives. They feed off uncertainty, insecurity, and fear. But when you stand in certainty, when you stop explaining your worth, when you stop negotiating your boundaries, they have nothing left to cling to. The moment they feel you no longer need them is the moment they begin to lose access to your life. Because what they can't control, they can't stay near, and what you no longer fear, you finally overcome. You owe it to yourself to feel free, not just free from others, but free within yourself. Free from guilt, from shame, from the endless cycle of giving more than you receive. You were never meant to be their emotional dumping ground. You were never created to hold space for abuse under the disguise of love. Your purpose is bigger than survival. Your peace is worth protecting without apology. The power you seek has always been inside you, hidden beneath the layers of self-doubt, buried under the weight of toxic approval. But now you see it, you feel it, and you're learning to trust it. No more chasing closure, no more waiting for them to change, no more sacrificing yourself to prove your loyalty. The version of you that allowed all of that is no longer here. You've stepped into someone stronger. And that strength, quiet and clear, is the very thing toxic people can't stand and will never conquer again. Growth demands that you leave behind everything that no longer supports your peace. That includes people. That includes habits. That includes your old self, the one who tolerated too much, stayed too long, and kept making excuses for those who gave you pain instead of love. True transformation doesn't happen in comfort. It begins when you stop settling, when you choose discomfort over disrespect, when you stop asking how to fix them and start asking how to free yourself. That's the moment everything begins to shift, not outside you, but within. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that stays small so they can feel big. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they've been in it for a long time. Loyalty means nothing if it's keeping you in a place where you're constantly drained, disrespected, or doubting your worth. Growth will always require loss, not just of people, but of patterns, because the truth is, you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. You can't become your highest self while staying loyal to what keeps you low. When you begin to rise, you'll feel resistance, not just from them, but from yourself. Your comfort zone will beg you to go back. Old guilt will whisper lies that you're abandoning people. Fear will tell you you're being too harsh. But remember this, it's not cruel to protect your peace. It's not mean to say no. It's not wrong to walk away from what dishonors your spirit. You're not being selfish, you're being real. And the people who are meant for your future will never require you to abandon yourself to be loved. Letting go doesn't mean you hate them. It means you love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to heal. It means you've accepted that no amount of effort will ever be enough for someone committed to misunderstanding you. It means you've stopped arguing with someone who benefits from your confusion. That kind of emotional strength is rare. And once you tap into it, you become untouchable. Toxic people will try to come back. They'll test your boundaries. They'll disguise their manipulation as apology, their guilt as affection, their control as care. But you'll know better now. You'll feel the energy shift. You'll sense the pattern before it begins. Because once you've tasted peace, chaos will never feel like home again. You'll stop needing closure because you'll realize peace is the only closure you ever needed. And that peace comes from choosing yourself. Without guilt, without fear, without apology. Keep choosing you. Keep rising. Keep cutting ties with what pulls you down. Because the more you honor your boundaries, the more you strengthen your soul. And in that strength, you'll find the freedom that toxic people tried so hard to keep from you. Not because they're strong, but because they knew that once you woke up to your power, they'd never be able to touch you again. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop giving others the power to define you. You begin to move from a deeper place, not out of fear, not out of guilt, but from knowing who you are and what you deserve. That inner clarity becomes your compass. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply leads. The moment you no longer justify your boundaries is the moment you start to honor them. And that is when your life starts to change, because your energy is no longer wasted defending your right to protect your peace. The truth is, toxic people don't fear confrontation. They fear indifference. They thrive on your emotional reaction. They count on you to explain, to defend, to argue, because every time you respond, you give them space to twist your words, distort your truth, and re-enter your life through confusion. But when you go silent, when you stop engaging, when you stop needing them to understand, you become unreachable. That's when your energy becomes sacred. That's when you reclaim your emotional power. The need to be understood is deeply human. But when it becomes a tool others use to control you, it must be released. Not everyone deserves access to your story. Not everyone deserves to hear your reasons. And not everyone is capable of seeing you clearly through the lens of their own projections. You don't exist to fix their narrative. You exist to live your truth, with or without their validation. And once you accept that, you become mentally untouchable. Emotional freedom starts with one decision: to stop betraying yourself for connection. You can't live in peace while constantly bending for people who would never do the same for you. You can't stay loyal to your future while you keep running back to the pain of your past. You can't build a strong, unshakable self while you continue feeding the opinions of people who wouldn't notice your silence unless it affected their control. Choosing yourself is hard, but staying stuck in emotional pain is harder. You are not cold for walking away. You are not heartless for protecting your space. You are not too much or too sensitive or too strong. You are becoming whole. And wholeness doesn't require outside permission. It requires inner trust. When you stop making excuses for bad behavior and start honoring your boundaries like they're non-negotiable, you become a force of calm that cannot be manipulated. You rise above drama. You detach from chaos. You return to yourself. The moment you stop needing their reaction is the moment you take back your direction. You no longer waste energy managing others' emotions. You invest that energy into building the life you deserve, a life rooted in truth, a life guided by clarity, a life where your peace is protected not through control but through conviction. That's the shift toxic people can't touch. And once you feel that shift, you'll never allow anyone to steal your peace again. Your silence is not a weakness, it's a boundary. It's the moment you decide your energy is no longer available for manipulation. It's the day you choose clarity over conflict, dignity over drama, peace over performance. You stop chasing apologies. You stop hoping for change from people who benefit from staying the same. And that shift, the one where you go inward, where you reclaim your focus, becomes the beginning of your emotional freedom. You realize that your healing is not a group project, it's a personal revolution. The world won't always applaud your strength, especially when your strength looks like letting go, especially when your peace offends those who once fed on your chaos. But you don't owe anyone your suffering just to make them feel comfortable. You don't owe your silence to people who used your words against you. You don't owe loyalty to those who only valued you when you were easy to control. That version of you, the one who stayed quiet, the one who kept bending, served its purpose, but it's time to release it. Because you're not here to keep surviving. You're here to live fully, freely, without fear of who walks away when you finally stand tall. Emotional manipulation loses its grip when you know your worth. Toxic people can no longer use guilt to pull you back when you've made peace with being misunderstood. They can't weaponize your kindness when it's grounded in boundaries. They can't shame you into submission when you've stopped needing their approval. And they certainly can't control you when you've detached from the need to be seen by people who never truly looked. This kind of strength isn't loud, it's not aggressive, it's calm, firm, and unstoppable. There's a quiet confidence that rises when you finally realize you don't need closure, you need distance. You need space to breathe, space to rebuild, space to return to yourself without the noise of false love and empty words. You begin to understand that the most powerful act of self-respect is walking away, not with anger, but with clarity. You don't scream, you don't plead, you simply no longer respond. And in that silence, your power echoes louder than any words ever could. You become untouchable when your inner peace is no longer dependent on external validation. When your decisions are based on alignment, not approval. When you start choosing solitude over toxic company, standards over settling, truth over comfort, you stop explaining, you stop defending, you stop shrinking. And in that space you grow not just taller but deeper, rooted in self-trust, anchored in self-worth. Let them call you cold. Let them label your peace as pride. What they call distance is your healing. What they see as silence is your freedom. You don't need them to understand it. You just need to keep choosing it, because the day you decided to stop making yourself available to people who only drain you was the day you truly began to live. And that life, centered, clear, and free, is one no toxic person can ever touch again. There's a shift that happens when you finally stop negotiating your value, when you no longer offer discounts on your peace, your time, or your truth. You begin to move differently. You stop chasing approval and start choosing alignment. You stop giving people multiple chances to dishonor your boundaries. You stop explaining why your soul no longer fits into the small spaces they kept you in. And in that moment, you're no longer a participant in your own disrespect. You become a guardian of your energy. You weren't born to be drained. You weren't meant to carry the weight of other people's choices, excuses, or emotional chaos. You were made to feel light, to move freely, to exist in spaces that celebrate your growth instead of resenting it. And when you remove the weight of toxic influence, you realize how long you've been carrying burdens that were never yours. You start to breathe differently. You stop feeling responsible for everyone's comfort and finally feel accountable to your own truth. You cannot heal in places that constantly trigger your wounds. You cannot evolve while constantly questioning your worth through the eyes of people who never really saw you. Growth requires environment. Peace requires intention. You can't expect to become your highest self while living at the mercy of people who prefer you powerless. Every time you allow their behavior to slide, you teach them what you'll accept. But the moment you say no more, even in silence, You teach yourself that your peace is not negotiable. It takes strength to walk away from what's familiar. It takes courage to choose stillness over attention, clarity over chaos, and boundaries over belonging to the wrong crowd. But you were never meant to belong where you had to hide parts of yourself to be accepted. You were never meant to dim your light to be tolerated. You were meant to shine without shrinking, to speak without trembling, to live without constantly proving you're worthy of love or respect. Letting go is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's understanding that your heart was not designed to be broken over and over by the same hands, that your mind was not created to be manipulated by people who only come around when it benefits them, and that your soul was never meant to be entangled with energy that confuses control for care. You break free the moment you stop making excuses for behavior that hurts you. This is your time to reclaim every piece of yourself that you gave away trying to be enough for people who couldn't even be honest with themselves. You don't have to carry their projections. You don't have to absorb their guilt. You don't have to stay where your presence is only valued when it's convenient. You're allowed to outgrow people. You're allowed to protect your peace. And you're allowed to rise without looking back. Because the moment you fully honor yourself, you become untouchable. Not in arrogance, but in power, in purpose, in peace.
True freedom begins when you stop seeking permission to be yourself.
It starts the moment you decide that your worth is not conditional, never dependent on anyone else's acceptance, approval, or approval. Toxic people thrive on your uncertainty. They feed on your doubt. They survive on the space you create when you question your value. But when you stop needing their validation, you strip away their power. Suddenly, their opinions become irrelevant noise, and your inner voice becomes your strongest guide. You are not responsible for fixing what they refuse to see. You are not obligated to stay and suffer because they are uncomfortable with change. You are not weak for protecting your heart by creating distance. This is not abandonment, it is preservation. Your energy is sacred, and when you guard it fiercely, you make space for healing, growth, and real connection. You begin to understand that some relationships are meant to teach you lessons, not to last forever, and the peace that comes from releasing them is priceless. The most radical act of self-love is choosing yourself every single day. It means choosing boundaries even when it feels lonely. It means saying no when every part of you wants to say yes to keep the peace. It means accepting that not everyone will understand or support your transformation, and that's okay. You don't need everyone's approval to live your truth. You don't need to explain your choices to anyone who isn't willing to respect them. You only need to be true to yourself. When you commit to this truth, you start to notice a shift in your energy. You become less reactive and more intentional. You respond with calm instead of chaos. You choose peace over conflict. This creates a natural filter that pushes toxic energy away. It's not about avoiding confrontation. It's about not engaging in battles that drain your soul. Your silence becomes a shield. Your boundaries become a fortress. And your peace becomes untouchable. Remember, the goal is not to change others. It's to change your relationship with them. You cannot control their behavior, but you can control how you respond. You can decide who deserves your time and who does not. You can choose environments that nurture your growth rather than sabotage it. This is the power of self-awareness combined with courage. The courage to walk away from toxicity without guilt, to reclaim your life without apology, and to live boldly without fear.
You were never meant to be a victim of other people's shadows.
You were meant to be the light that breaks through the darkness. And that light shines brightest when you stop allowing toxic people to dim it. So take a deep breath, stand firm in your worth, and remember, your peace is your power. Protect it fiercely, guard it relentlessly, and know that once you do, toxic people will lose their hold on your life forever. The moment you decide to protect your peace, you reclaim control over your life. It's no longer about reacting to others, but about choosing how you engage with the world. Toxic people rely on chaos to keep you off balance. They need your confusion, your doubt, your willingness to justify their behavior. But when you stand firm in your boundaries, when you refuse to participate in their games, you disarm their influence. You become the calm in the storm, unshaken and unbreakable. This power comes from understanding that your emotional energy is precious and limited. Every moment spent defending yourself against toxicity is energy lost, energy that could be redirected toward your growth, your dreams, your peace. You start to see that saying no is not selfish, it is necessary. Saying no to toxic demands, no to manipulative guilt trips, no to emotional exhaustion, these are acts of courage and self-respect. You learn that protecting yourself is not about building walls to isolate, but about creating space to thrive. When you no longer carry the weight of toxic people's opinions, your mind clears. You stop second-guessing your choices. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You begin to trust yourself again, your instincts, your feelings, your voice. That trust is the foundation of unshakable confidence. It's the light that guides you through doubt and fear. And once you find it within yourself, no outside force can extinguish it. Your peace becomes a priority, not an afterthought. You stop sacrificing your well-being for false connections or unhealthy attachments. You start to attract people who respect your boundaries, who honor your time, who uplift your spirit. These are the relationships that fuel your soul and push you toward your highest self. Toxic people fade into the background because you no longer give them a seat at your table. This is the power of choice, the power to decide who influences your life and who doesn't. You realize that your life is not a series of events controlled by others, but a conscious journey guided by your values. Every boundary you set, every no you say, is a declaration of self-love. It is a reminder that you matter, that your happiness and health are non-negotiable. You will feel resistance. Toxic people will test your limits, try to pull you back into old patterns. But each time you stand firm, you grow stronger. You build resilience that can't be broken by negativity or manipulation. Your peace becomes your armor, your boundaries become your sword, and your self-respect becomes your victory. This is the truth that sets you free. You are the guardian of your peace, the protector of your energy, the master of your boundaries. When you accept this, toxic people lose their power to disturb you. And that freedom, that unshakable peace, is yours to claim now and forever. You have within you the power to rewrite the story of your relationships, to redefine what connection means on your terms. Toxic people thrive when you tolerate less than you deserve. They feed on hesitation, on your willingness to excuse their behavior, on the moments you let your guard down. But when you claim your right to healthy, respectful relationships, you send a message that cannot be ignored. You become a force that attracts respect and repels negativity. It starts with clarity, knowing exactly what you will and will not accept. This clarity is more than a list of boundaries. It's a declaration of self-worth. It's a refusal to settle for anything that diminishes your spirit or threatens your peace. When you hold this clarity, you hold a mirror up to every interaction. You see clearly which energies serve you and which ones drain you. This insight empowers you to make choices that nurture your soul instead of depleting it. The courage to enforce boundaries is not easy. It requires you to face discomfort, disapproval, rejection, or even isolation. But here's the truth. Discomfort is temporary, and peace is forever. When you prioritize your mental and emotional well-being, you lay the foundation for a life where joy is not dependent on toxic approval. You stop carrying the heavy weight of other people's drama and start carrying your own light instead. Each boundary you set creates space for growth. You reclaim hours once wasted on emotional turmoil and invest them in your dreams, your health, and your happiness. You learn that self-care is not indulgence, but survival. It is the practice of honoring your needs and refusing to compromise your essence. This shift changes everything. Your energy becomes magnetic to positive influences and immune to harmful ones. When you step fully into this power, you begin to understand the art of detachment, not coldness, but freedom. Freedom from needing to fix others. Freedom from emotional entanglement that holds you hostage. You stop trying to change toxic people and focus on changing how you respond to them. This is not resignation, it is mastery. It is the ultimate act of self-respect to disengage from what harms you while remaining open to what heals you. The journey to protecting your peace is a practice, not a one-time act. You will face challenges that test your resolve, moments when old fears whisper doubts. Yet with every choice to uphold your boundaries, you grow stronger, more confident, and more at peace. You transform your inner landscape so profoundly that toxic energy simply cannot find a foothold. You deserve relationships that lift you higher, not pull you down. You deserve to be treated with kindness, respect, and honesty. When you decide to do this one powerful thing, stand firm in your boundaries, you send a signal that your peace is not up for debate. And in that moment, toxic people lose their power to bother you, because you become untouchable, not by walls, but by the unshakable strength of your self-love. Every time you honor your boundaries, you reinforce the truth that your peace matters above all else. This act of self-respect radiates outward, shaping how the world responds to you. Toxic people can no longer slip through cracks you once left open. They meet a firm, unwavering presence that says, "I choose me." This choice transforms your reality. It rewires your brain to prioritize well-being, fostering resilience against emotional manipulation. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes, until protecting your energy feels like breathing, effortless and essential. Understanding the psychology behind this transformation reveals why it works. When you set clear limits, you activate your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making and self-control, overriding impulsive emotional reactions that toxic people exploit. This neurological shift strengthens your inner voice, allowing you to pause before responding, assess the situation calmly, and act in alignment with your values. You stop reacting out of fear or guilt and start responding from a place of strength and clarity. This shift also rewires your emotional associations. Instead of linking interactions with toxic people to anxiety or self-doubt, your mind learns to associate these encounters with confidence and calm. This rewiring breaks the cycle of emotional dependency that toxic individuals cultivate. You begin to feel empowered rather than overwhelmed. You realize that your emotional state is yours to command, not theirs to control. This mental freedom is revolutionary. It frees you to focus on your growth, your goals, and your happiness without distraction. Choosing yourself first is not selfish. It is necessary. It allows you to cultivate a wellspring of inner strength that nourishes every area of your life. You start to see that toxic relationships are energy drains, keeping you stuck in patterns of pain and frustration. By contrast, healthy boundaries create fertile ground for flourishing. They attract people who align with your values and respect your space. They create a community of support that uplifts and inspires. Your mind and heart begin to synchronize around this new truth. You feel less anxious and more centered. You begin to trust your instincts and honor your feelings without hesitation. This harmony between mind and heart creates a powerful force field against toxicity. It is an invisible armor that protects your peace even in the most challenging moments. This protection is not about shutting down or withdrawing. It is about engaging with life on your terms, fully present, fully empowered, fully alive. This transformation requires commitment. It asks you to show up for yourself daily, to remind yourself that peace is your right and your responsibility. It demands patience as old habits fade and new patterns emerge. But every step forward is a victory. Every boundary set is a declaration of freedom. Every moment of calm is a testament to your strength. When you embrace this practice, toxic people lose their power, not because you change them, but because you change your relationship with them. And that change is unstoppable. When you fully commit to protecting your energy, you begin to reshape the way you experience the world. This is not a simple act of avoidance, but a profound declaration of self-love that changes your entire perspective. Toxic people can only affect you if you give them permission through your attention, your emotions, or your time. By consciously withdrawing that permission, you reclaim the power they once held. This reclaiming is transformative. It restores your sense of safety and peace, allowing you to focus on what truly matters, your growth, your joy, your purpose. This shift requires you to become fiercely honest with yourself. It asks you to recognize the subtle ways toxicity may have infiltrated your life, even in relationships you once trusted. You learn to identify patterns of manipulation, negativity, and control, not to judge or shame, but to empower yourself with awareness. This clarity dismantles confusion and self-doubt. It frees you from the trap of trying to fix others or prove your worth through their approval. Instead, you turn inward, nurturing your own value that no one can take away. As this inner work deepens, you develop emotional immunity. Like a muscle, it grows stronger each time you choose peace over conflict, boundaries over chaos, and self-respect over self-sacrifice. This immunity does not mean you become indifferent or cold. Rather, it means you cultivate discernment. You can engage with empathy and kindness without losing yourself in another's toxicity. You learn to give love without losing energy, to care without carrying burdens that are not yours to bear. This balance creates harmony within and radiates outward, influencing your environment in powerful ways. The most important transformation happens within your mind. You replace limiting beliefs that once kept you trapped in cycles of pain with empowering truths that lift you higher. You remind yourself daily that you are worthy of respect, kindness, and peace. This mindset shift rewires your brain to seek and attract healthier connections naturally. It changes your energy from reactive to proactive, from victim to victor. When you think like this, toxic people lose their grip because they thrive on disempowerment, and you refuse to provide it. This process is not about perfection, but progress. Every moment you choose to uphold your boundaries is a triumph over old patterns that no longer serve you. Every time you prioritize your well-being, you reinforce your commitment to yourself and your future. You become a beacon of strength and clarity, inspiring others without saying a word. Your peace becomes contagious, your confidence undeniable, and your freedom undeniable. In this new space, you reclaim your time and energy, two of life's most precious resources. You invest them where they are valued and respected. You attract relationships that build you up, not tear you down. You create an environment where your soul can thrive, free from the shadows of toxicity. This is not just protection, it is liberation. It is the powerful choice to live fully, boldly, and authentically, no longer held hostage by the chaos of toxic influence. When you embrace this truth, you step into a life where toxic people can never bother you again.